So I've got 5 things that I think will support you in having more organic conversations in your coaching conversations. Hi, Lyssa deHart here, and I'm super excited to be with you today. I want to talk to you a little bit about some questions that have shown up on the YouTube channel. And so, first, thank you, viewers, for asking questions. I really appreciate it. And two, I think it's a really important question. The question that was coming up is, how is it that MCCs are able to have such organic conversations with their clients? And the second piece of this was, how do I have more organic conversations with my clients? And so I wanted to sort of address some of these little issues. So I've got 5 things that I think will support you in having more organic conversations in your coaching conversations. Try and say that 5 times fast. So let's talk about what it takes to actually demonstrate organic coaching. And I think there's the sense of understanding what conversational coaching is anyway. Understanding the competencies is hugely important to this. How you are cultivating your curiosity, finding your own authentic voice, and then developing that voice. And I think those are things that are going to be really crucial as you consider how to move forward with a more organic style to the way that you show up in your, either it's recordings or honestly, just in all of your coaching conversations. Because isn't that what we want, is to have real conversations with people? So let's go. So as we take a look at conversational coaching, what makes for a really good conversation is probably the place to start. Think about a conversation that you've had with somebody who you really love, or your best friend, or your spouse, or just even a stranger or a client where you've had a really powerful conversation with that person. What are some of the key elements that made that conversation so powerful? I'm going to guess it had to do with really listening, that there was an ability that you had to show up with compassion and empathy, that you had confidence and belief not only in your own ability to just be in the space with another person, but also a confidence and belief in them, that they were capable of sharing themselves in the conversation as well. I think there's a deep curiosity where we are asking questions that are based on wanting to go deeper into the conversation versus trying to solve a problem. And then there's the way that we show up in our tone, our volume, and our energy. Obviously, if I'm yelling at you and I'm really mad, it's going to be not so much of a conversational coaching conversation. Honestly, once we start yelling, we're not even having a conversation anymore. Now we're like monologuing often. And so, how do we stay out of monologuing when we're coaching? I think that's probably super important. And so understanding these factors that lead to a conversation is the first step. I think the second step is to really take a look at our curiosity. How do you personally cultivate curiosity, especially when somebody's telling you a lot of information? This could be, again, your best friend or your spouse, right? And what are you listening for? What draws your attention? Is it interesting details, or are you really listening for what are the important underlying threads, the important words, the important beliefs or values that are being exposed through what the person is sharing with you? I think that also, how are we turning our curiosity on ourselves? How do you self-reflect on your own work? And I'm going to use this word critically assess, but I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean it very much in a courageous way. How do you courageously explore your own work so that you can assess your work, so you can listen to what the client offered you and then notice what you said in response, and then start to explore what choice points you might have had, and then listen to a lot of coaching. So really, just as an example of this, I recently did a coaching demonstration for a friend of mine's group, and in the conversation, the client said, I don't want to be walking on eggshells anymore, and that eggshells is really like that's something my family does and I don't want to do it anymore. And then they also mentioned that they were having some real stomach pains. As I say eggshells, I'm noticing my stomach is really getting cramped up. And as the coach, I demonstrated curiosity about the eggshells because if anybody who knows me, they know I love metaphors. And so I hear this walking on eggshells and my curiosity just like turns on. But what I failed to do in the conversation is ask a curiosity-based question not about the eggshells, I did that, but about the linkage between the eggshells and the stomach pain that had just shown up. And when I was listening to the debrief, when I was chatting with the client at the end of it, one of the things that they said to me was, I felt so partnered by you in this coaching conversation, except for in one place. And the place was when I mentioned my stomach was cramping up. And when I went back and I took the audio and I ran it through Ray Notes and I started doing my own work about how I was going to be curious about what showed up for me, I listened to what the client had shared and I missed the somatic element of the stomach ache in combination with the eggshells. And I think instead of saying, as you say, eggshells, what does that even mean to you? Which is, I think, what the question was that I asked the client, or something along that line. I really dialed in my curiosity and been like, I heard eggshells in combination with your stomach tensing up. And I'm curious as you hear me reflect that back to you, what's showing up for you now? And again, I think in this way, we deepen the conversation. And from my perspective, organic conversations that seem to just be really flowing and deep are that way because they're deep, because we've really gotten into the meat of what's important. We're way below the waterline. We're not just losing our mind or glazing over a situation or the surface stuff, who said what, when, where. We've really gone below the waterline. So the eggshells was taking us below the waterline, but if I had linked my curiosity around the eggshells and the stomach ache, it would have taken us even deeper, more effectively and more quickly, and the client would have felt partnered in that particular area of the conversation. And so I think really, how are we doing our own work about how we're being curious, not just with the client, because that's important, but also with ourselves. And so that really leads us into this idea of finding your own voice. And this piece of self-reflection continues here because as I'm finding my own voice as a coach, I go from just asking sort of rote, what's your topic for today? And I start to really develop choice points. How do I want to invite the client into the conversation? What's showing up as important for us to explore today? What is it that is kind of bubbling to the surface for you in our conversation today, right? Like there may be multiple different ways that I'm able to explore with the client, but I need to be doing my work and finding my own voice about how I want to ask these sorts of questions. And I think listening to a lot of coaching. If I were to say anything that really supported me in my own coach development, it was listening to a lot of coaching. And one way that I was able to do that was I went to Gail Moore's website, More Masterful Coaching. You can find a link below. But I went to More Masterful Coaching and I started picking and choosing different MCC coaches who had done coaching demonstrations on Gail's show. And I started listening to them and I started listening for what I really liked. And then I started listening for what I really didn't like. And then really starting to get clarity about how I wanted to show up in the space with another person, which really leads into developing your voice. I was capturing good questions. I was making a list of questions. I was going through the competencies and I was crafting questions that aligned with the competencies. And it was so crucial to me. So for a while, I had a list of questions that I had next to me for when my brain froze. And I needed this just so that when that little red button started blinking and I was doing a coaching demonstration, whether it was for my mentor coaching or whether it was for a coaching, demonstration for my next credential, I was able to be comfortable with that little beeping red light because I knew I had available to me questions that resonated with who I was and how I wanted to show up with my clients. And I really invite you to consider these things as you're thinking about your own coaching and how you want to show up and be with your clients. And so I hope this was useful for you today. Thank you so much for watching this video. There should be some, I think maybe this direction. You'll find more videos that you can watch, and hopefully they'll be useful to you. So cheers. Thank you. Please leave comments below if you have any questions. And I look forward to seeing you on another video. Cheers.